Anthony, if I have to pick one area that gives me pause, where I do not have to accept an entirely naturalistic, materialistic explanation of the world, it focuses on the fine-tuning of this universe and the implications thereof. It seems so incredible that all of the constants of physics have to be pretty much just so in order to have us to exist. So how do you deal with it? I know there are arguments on both sides.
Well, of course, the great temptation on the part of the religious apologist is to say this is evidence of the fact that the universe was designed and came into existence so that we could come into existence. It's a sort of massive act of interesting egoism to think that it's all here because it could produce us.
Actually, some of them say something different. They say this is evidence of design, but it could be intelligent aliens, or we could be a simulation. But there's enough there that says there's some intelligence there. You can't prove that it's a God. Certainly, you can't prove it's a Trinity, because it's just as likely to be artificial. But there is design. That's the argument.
That's the argument. Well, it's always struck me as being one of those marvelous examples of how beautiful it is to see things in hindsight from the other end of the spectrum, looking back at how things got here. Mm-hmm. People do this, in their own lives. They say, well, here I am at the age of 60, and if that hadn't happened at 30, I wouldn't be here now. It was just an accident that I met my wife and it changed my, and blah, blah. And that gives them a retrospective sense of fate, order, and structure. But what they're doing is they're imposing that view on it. Now, we are here because the universe, or this universe, is structured the way that it is. So in a way, it's no surprise that the universe is fit for us being here, because if we weren't, we wouldn't be here. It's a bit like saying, like Dr. Pangloss did, the reason why we have noses is so that we keep our spectacles in place. You're arguing backwards, and you're looking at it from the wrong end. And I think the whole anthropic argument is an argument based on looking at it from the wrong end. Everything needful for us to be here is the case because we are here. But that should be no surprise to anybody.
We don't live in the middle of the sun for exactly the same reason. We live in a place that just seems to fit us, where water can be in 3 states, a gas, a liquid, and a solid. And that's necessary for life, that it be a liquid, because we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't ask the question.
That's exactly right. So nothing about the nature of the constants, nothing about the structure of the universe, nothing about the fulfillment of the conditions for biological life on a planet of this size with these pressures and temperatures and resources, nothing about them should surprise us, given the fact that we exist.
Okay, but that's the first step. That says that if we didn't exist, we wouldn't ask the question, so we have to have those conditions in order for us to ask the question. So that's the first step. But that doesn't answer the question, because it's still the question, why is it the case? Why is it the case that we are here to ask that question? I mean, there's another question to be answered after that.
Well, in fact, there's an intermediate question, which is that if anybody was persuaded by the fact that those conditions had to be satisfied for us to be here, and they seem to be very finely, very precisely tuned, and took this to be evidence of design, you could challenge that by saying, well, there are aspects of the design, wisdom teeth and appendices and what have you, typical examples, which are not very good. I remember somebody putting it by saying, I think it was George Bernard Shaw, that the Bible says that God made the world in 6 days and on the 7th saw that it was good and he rested. But from my point of view, there could be improvements, he said. So when you take that line on it, you see that maybe you should challenge the conception that it is design, because it's in fact much more consistent with a set of conditions directing how things turn out as a result of a lot of failed experiments and in a very imperfect way.
Well, one could argue that is part of the way to build diversity into the world and to build a naturalism, so that whoever created it or whatever created it, be it a god, a transcendent consciousness, or some intelligent aliens, allowed the world to have its own freedoms. I mean, one can build a rationally, internally consistent story to explain that. So you're still left with the clear reality that if these constants were very much different, we wouldn't be here. And, some have said, and I kind of go along with it, it cries out for an explanation. Now, some people have used, and many do now, the multiple worlds, where if there are enough universes that can be generated, which physics can do, that a world like ours would be one if there's an infinite amount, would almost certainly occur. Do you follow? You like that argument philosophically?
It's a tempting argument, yes, because it solves at a stroke the question, why are they like this? But it seems to me that you could undercut that necessity for that debate by saying, once again, the why question is a very misleading one. That there is something rather misleading about a very general question of that form. Why are the constants that way? There is a good answer to that. If you were prepared to be satisfied by it, and that is because they are. Now we've moved on the debate. The constants are that way because we exist. Our existence is sufficient reason why the constants are that way. We're looking at it from the other end now. Yeah. And then we're asking the extra questions, but anyway, why are they like that? And actually, it's a good enough answer to say because they are.
Well, I think that is one answer. In fact, physicists have long assumed that and have tried to find the one unified theory that either had consistent mathematics or explained all the forces, so that there was only one way that you could do that. If you did that, that would be a long way to the solution. Religionists could still come in and say, okay, that's the only way it can be, but why is it that way that generates life? I mean, they won't be quiet after that. But certainly that would be a good step. But now it looks like physics cannot do that. It doesn't seem like there'll be that one set of laws which it can only be that way. So we're left with the uncertainty of generating these laws, and yet we're produced in this highly fine-tuned way.
Well, as you say, it would be extremely nice if at the most fundamental level, at whatever level underlies the quantum level, we found that there was something strictly deterministic about the range of possibilities that matter could take and how it could be organized. Actually, we find something which conceptually, at any rate, is equally satisfying, which is that if you think the landscape of string theories is heading in the right kind of direction, that does permit the sort of pluralistic view that there can be many kinds of universe, and that these constants could differ across these different universes.
That still leaves you with the laws that generated the string theory, why they were such that out of nothing you could generate multiple universes. I mean, no matter where you go, you're left with problems.
Well, you've got a psychological track here and a rationality track. The psychological track always goes on looking for why. This is our inheritance from our childhoods, where we just keep asking why until we get to a first term. The rationality track, however, says any kind of explanation that you're looking for must be one which saves the appearances, to use the old Aristotelian phrase. That is one which, when you've got to it, is going to be consistent with the way things are here. The trouble with transcendent answers, with religious answers, is that they require an ontological, a metaphysical leap into something else, something different, something which stands outside the range of things that we think we can extrapolate from familiarly, and they won't save the appearances. They're going to be of a quite different order. And that violates a principle of reason, Occam's razor, the principle that says, try to be as economical, as parsimonious as you can, try to stick with roots from what you know, and don't jump to the other side of the Grand Canyon and have a completely different kind of explanation for what you're trying to understand here.